Welcome, everyone, to the Doctor Who TV movie panel, where, well, we'll be talking about the delights of Peter Cushing. So I have a number of exciting panelists today who are going to be talking about the 1996 Paul McGann movie and, I guess, various influences thereof. So I guess, can my guests unmute themselves and introduce yourselves? Jason, why don't you start?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Tucker. I am the founder and co-chair for Console Room. And I have, been watching Doctor Who for the majority of my life, starting in the early 80s, and was, very excited when after the hiatus, well, after the whatever we call it, Doctor Who was going to be back.
Cool. Marcia?
My name's Marcia Franklin. I have been blogging as Neo-Whovian at Confessions of a Neo-Whovian since 2011. I started watching the show in 2008, so I started from Rose and went through series 4, which had just finished airing at the time, and then went back and kind of started filling in everything else from there. So Paul McGann's movie was actually the last current Doctor I watched. He was the last one of the ones who were available at the time. So has he was like the last one I filled in before continuing forward with what was airing. So it's got kind of a weird special place in my heart.
Cool. Jeff?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Elston. Like Jason, I have been watching Doctor Who for the majority of my life. I don't even know when I started, but somewhere around the late 80s, because I don't really remember my life without it. And as such, like I have very happy memories of when the TV movie aired on Fox. I remember watching it go out live. I remember recording it and keeping that VHS tape for a very long time, probably until I got the DVD from the UK, I would imagine, because it was just so cool to see Doctor Who on our screens again. And for me, the first time in my life, I believe, watching it, go out live. So that was really exciting. So interested and excited to hear what others have to say about their own experiences and memories with this particular piece of Doctor Who. I don't know if I'd say ephemera, but episode. We'll call it an episode.
Cool. Bill? No, you need to unmute.
We'll figure it out eventually.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Bill Evenson. I'm on mute, and I started watching Doctor Who, around 82, something like that. Classic series fan, but I spent the wilderness years not paying any attention at all to Doctor Who. I had no idea there was a TV movie until I rejoined fandom, or started paying attention again in about 2002, maybe 2001, I guess. Maybe a little earlier. Anyway, so yeah, TV movie right over my head. I had no idea.
Have you ever watched it?
I have this action figure and I have the script. So I've been...
Cool. And my name's Stacey Smith. I'm a non-fiction writer and editor. I write things like Who is the Doctor with Graham Burke. I wrote under the name Robert Smith, but I recently changed to Stacey. And I edit the Outside In series and so on. I'm also a classic series fan from way back. So I've been watching since I was 5 years old, which was, at least 10 years ago. And I remember watching like Jeff, I was watching the TV movie live. I was so excited, and I was taping it on VHS, and I was so paranoid about missing the beginning. I started the tape way early, and then about 10 minutes before the end, the tape stopped and it started rewinding. And I was like, no. So yeah, that was my TV movie experience.
My heart breaks. Oh, terrible. So have you ever seen the last 10 minutes?
I was watching it at the time, so I have seen it. It was like, I can't see it again.
Just once.
Yes, just once.
Just the one time.
Imagine there being a time where, if you didn't see it,
yep,
and you didn't record it, done. No. Yeah.
I know. Yes. Yep. Ad breaks and all. Yeah. All All right, so
Got
I guess,
one here if you need one.
Yeah.
I can.
Oh, thanks.
I'll
Just tell
send
me
this
about the
to you.
last 10 minutes. It's all right. Just
I'll just describe the last.
Yeah, okay, so now we're going to switch to a commentary of the last 10
Yes.
minutes of the TV movie, as narrated by Bill Evenson.
Yeah. So as I understand it, Grace got in the TARDIS and they flew off and had a whole series together.
So it's funny you
kids,
say
they
that
had
because
kids, too.
that was actually my first thought when you said you missed the last 10 minutes. Is if you hadn't seen the last 10 minutes, that's exactly what should happen in this one. Her entire life is ruined. Everybody on Earth hates her. Everyone treats her like she is the worst piece of garbage that's ever lived, and there's no explanation for it. She should get on that TARDIS and go. I've started the panel, Stacey. Let's go.
All right.
Drawing a line in the sand. Yep.
I mean, she's just murdered a patient. Her boss has set her x-rays on fire. I mean, why is she staying?
Well, and can we talk about, like, I know HIPAA wasn't a thing then, but like burning records and pretending this patient was never in the hospital? Like, there's a lot of ethical problems within this healthcare system in San Francisco. So yeah.
I agree with you, but I actually do see, I think that it makes sense that he does that because he assumes it's a mistake. It's not the right thing to do, but there's at least a reason for it. He assumes that's a mistake. There's no way the guy's got two hearts. You know what I mean?
And now no one ever needs to know he was even there.
Right.
This is Bill's attitude to everything in life, really. It's like, well,
burn
sure,
it. Yeah,
sure,
burn
I
it.
robbed that
What
store.
was I supposed to do?
I had good intentions.
Yeah. Seems like a rational.
What was I supposed to do? Suffer the consequences of my actions?
That's ridiculous.
Kind of a drip am I?
No.
Yeah, I mean that whole hospital is pretty bizarre hospital because they're like, oh, we've got the latest state-of-the-art equipment, and then like you go to the other section where the doctor's wandering around, you're like, this is like a derelict hospital in this wing.
Yeah,
that's
yeah. That's, I remember at the time thinking like, that's odd. Where in the hospital is like busted windows, leaky roof, like where is this and why does it exist? Like, it'd be one thing if it was like maybe a little bit torn up, like, oh, it's remodeling, but like it's full on like post-apocalyptic, like this is a hospital that closed 20 years ago. It's bizarre.
I think the whole TV movie has stuff like that though, where like you ever watch a show but you're not paying attention, you're in another room doing laundry. That's the TV movie because you're watching and it's like, what happened? Where are we?
You're like, I walked out of the room for 2 minutes.
How did the master get in the TARDIS? I don't even know what's going on.
Who moves out of a house and takes the couch?
Well, okay. Can we have just a real quick conversation about Brian? Like, he really sucks. She's a medical professional and she's being paged away from their opera, which, yeah, that sucks. But if she's being paged, it's probably to save a life. Now, granted, she actually killed the man, but he's pissed. He's so pissed that she had to go and do her job. And I get the sense that he's sort of the lazy type and she's the breadwinner. And he gets so pissed that he has a tantrum, moves out and takes the couch. Like, come on, Brian. Like,
he takes the couch and leaves the shoes. I mean, this is the odd choice for Brian. Yes.
Right. I mean, one is much easier to take than the other.
See,
I guess.
This shows how lazy he is. I mean, he needs his couch where he's going to spend most of his time.
Right.
With his shoes off, like lounging around.
I'm sure he was planning to send for the shoes later or something. But and I also love the fact that she doesn't even notice it at first. You know, she sort of like looks around and then she's like, he's taking the sofa. Like, to me, that would stand out. Like, you'd miss a large piece of a side chair, maybe not immediately. A TV tray, sure, but the sofa, like. I think you'd see that right away. So again, that's a little bit disingenuous there, Grace. Like, pay attention to your surroundings.
Maybe that was the problem. She didn't pay attention to her surroundings. Extra. Oh, and now you're leaving the opera. Oh,
yeah. With a
I guess that does add up. That's the only thing you could say about her is that she doesn't pay enough attention to him.
Actually, my theory is that like he knows that she like is just killing patients left, right, and center. So he's like, "Oh God, you're being paged again? Like, can't you just stay in the opera and save someone's life?"
you know what's funny? I watched it this morning, and do you know what the last line she says right before McCoy starts going into convulsions? She goes, "Let me try something." She does something with that thing, and then
she's like shoves the guide wire into his heart, which again, like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, but. Would that immediately kill you? No, well, unfortunately, no. I watched a lot of ER though, so I think that counts for something. And it just seems like, would that really have killed him? But, you know, maybe it's just the Gallifreyan physiology or something that required him to, you know, not have a guide wire poked in him.
Based on your knowledge of medical procedures from watching a lot of ER, how would you say that Grace rates as a medical professional compared to the medical professionals on ER?
I mean, let's be fair. She didn't, I would say, trust her instinct. Like, she saw the x-ray. She knew she was lost. I don't know. I feel like she should have trusted her gut and known that, like, when she says, let me try something, like, that probably wasn't going to end well. She had the results of an x-ray in front of her. And then she still decided to ram a guide wire into his heart. So I have to rank her pretty low on the list. And, you know, some dicey stuff went down on ER over the years, but I don't know if anyone, like, legit, like, stabbed someone in the heart with a guide wire because they're like, no, I know this is wrong and I know I'm in the heart, but I'm going to do this anyway.
That Alex Kingston, she just
where's totally River Song when you need her? Yeah,
out of hand on ER.
Yep, it's true.
So you watched the TV movie earlier today, Bill? What is your favorite scene from the TV movie?
I have one, actually. It's so Grace calls for an ambulance. They answer the door. Eric Roberts is there with an ambulance. Don't think too much about it. I don't know how he knew, but and they do a dramatic back and forth between Eric Roberts and Paul McGann, and they, you know, the close up, they move in. The music is really tense. And it's a really dramatic moment because there's so much history between these two guys. And then McGann says, we're in a hurry. We got to get in your ambulance, because he doesn't recognize him. And it's fantastic. Like, it's so weird to watch the TV movie because it is bad. There are so many things in it that are just bad, but there are so many things that are really good. And that's really clever. I think that's my favorite part.
And I remember that scene from it's funny because I don't know if it's because I was the right age or because I certainly watched a lot of TV or because I rewatched my VHS recording of this I don't know 1,007 times or something, but I remember moments like that, like where the door opens and you see the master standing there at Grace's house. Like, that was absolutely in the promos and the commercials for the movie as I was watching, you know, Fox. So that scene always stands out because I saw it so many times outside of watching the TV movie, because I kept seeing it in the commercials, and then I kept seeing it in the commercials. You know, I feel like even I don't know if they were showing it during the event, but still, I just feel like that scene stands out because I saw it so many times.
Yeah. So Marcia, with the experience of, like, you know, seeing this as the culmination of all of Doctor Who, how did you find it?
Well, I don't think that I had as negative a reaction as a lot of longtime fans did, and it felt relatively natural to me. I mean, okay, yeah, it's not good television. It's Americanized Doctor Who, which in itself is a little weird, but it felt very much like a bridge to me, because like I said at the top, I came to the program through the new stuff and then watch back a bunch of the old stuff as much as was out on DVD at the time. And it just felt it still to me feels very transitional. There's a direct line between Ace and Grace and Rose to me. It's like there's kind of an interesting arc from these companions one to the other, because Rose embodied kind of some of the spark that Ace had, and the very self-sufficient kind of feel, and Grace added in the romance angle, which was new with the movie. And I know that in particular threw off a lot of fans at the time. Again, I was watching this in like 2008 or 2009, so it was old news, and we'd had other, you know, kissy stuff since then. But so yeah, it wasn't shocking to me in any way to have that romance angle, although I know that was a thing that stood out at the time that it first aired. But to me, it just kind of filled in a gap between the two kind of styles that I'd been seeing. So
yeah, well, what do the rest of us think about romance in the TV movie? Because it was pretty.
I'm just glad. I'm glad
time.
to hear, like you said, watching it with that perspective that it's not even important.
Right.
After watching the new series, because who cares?
Yeah,
it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, when you said, Marcia, that you see this sort of a bridge, like you had the advantage of having already been to the other side of the bridge because you'd seen all the new stuff. And then you went back and had you watched like everything, like you'd seen all of what was available for all 7 Doctors and then you watched the TV movie?
Yeah. I bought like off of eBay, I bought a set of all the DVDs that were available at the time. And so I started with An Unearthly Child and watched, in order from what there was. So there are a lot of gaps at that time, but I watched what I could in order. And so the TV movie was like the last thing that I watched.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I do think it does serve that sort of it is a bridge because it sort of comes right basically in the middle of when the classic series ended and when the new series comes back. And I totally agree with what you said about being able to draw a line from Ace to Grace to Rose, and even to some extent of like the plotting and the way the action unfolds. I remember at the time, like not I would say being somewhat ambivalent about the romance. Like I don't necessarily mind. Like I would say in modern Who, as with the TV movie, like I can recognize like that's not really for me, but if that brings other people into the show, that's fine. The thing that bothered me about not so much the romance was just I hate their physical kissing is so awkward and so tight-lipped, and there's these big spit strings. It's so just awkward to watch. I'm like, couldn't we have gotten a second or third take, or maybe that was the best they got? I don't know, but that's what I really didn't like, is that it just felt so it felt not forced from a plot standpoint, but like them actually like kissing felt very forced. Like I don't know, it just didn't feel natural. So that was the only thing that bothered me. Like I could care less about the romance.
Forced, and the Doctor's canceled now.
Yeah. No, not forced in that way. Good clarification. But forced just that, like, I don't know, like from an acting standpoint, like it just didn't feel natural. Like So that's the only thing.
Well, I mean, Paul McGann said he really like held back because he didn't want to have this kind of like tongue kissing and stuff like that was kind of intended. So yeah, I guess, but it's not really planned out. It's just the actor kind of trying to rail against something.
Yes, but I guess I can understand that because that was the first time there was like romance. Although again, we could go back to the Aztecs and talk about Kameka and the first Doctor, and he got engaged.
The strings of spit between the two of them. Yeah,
you could draw. Yes, that's exactly right. It just, I think there was a better, again, and I'm not an actor, so of course it's easy for me to say this, but I just feel like there could have been a better way to do that. But otherwise,
you're not an actor, you're not a doctor. We're learning so much about you today, Jeff.
But I watched Doctor Who and I watched a lot of ER, so I mean, I'm like adjacent, like Doctor adjacent. So an actor adjacent because I watch a lot of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm sort of like expert adjacent. So. Yeah.
He's watched a lot of saliva between lips.
Absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this for real? I've never seen that. There's actual saliva string.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't be the only one that noticed that. Like, even at the time, I was 14 when the TV movie went out, and yes, I absolutely noticed that. And however many years, 25, whatever years later, every time I watch the TV movie, I know it's coming, and I hate it because I just don't like it.
I have to admit, Bill, like you, I never noticed the strings of saliva. Apparently my television, well, actually the TV that me and my friend watched it on was in the lounge in our dormitory at the University of Minnesota, where we basically let everyone know that they were kicked out, that we had that reserved
those 2 hours.
For those 2 hours. No one else could use it. And we had it all set up and everything. And of course everyone thought, look at these two fucking nerds.
that's interesting though that you had a communal experience. I did not watching this, even though I have a brother who likes Doctor Who. He didn't watch it with me, I don't think. Did anyone else have? I mean,
Yeah.
Marcia and Bill, you didn't watch it as live, but what about you, Stacey? Like,
Yeah, I had a viewing party, so I had like all my roommates, plus I'd invited friends over and stuff. So it was kind of a big deal, and most of them had never seen Doctor Who before. And so then they were just kind of like actually everyone loved it. That was the interesting thing afterwards. They're like, that was great. Like, when's the next episode? Like there was a real sense of excitement. I actually loved it too.
2005.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I can look back and go, wow, it's a really odd piece of television. And I think when I watched it I was writing Who's 50, where we were kind of like going through like, the important moments of Doctor Who. So I wasn't watching everything, like Marshall was, but like I was kind of watching just the key ones here and there. And hit the TV movie, and I was like, well, this is weird. Like, it feels like TV of the 90s. Like, that's so weird for Doctor Who. Like, and I think like, if you took like, what was happening in Survival in '89 and you kind of like, fast forward the clock and like, roll through the evolution of television, you hit precisely the TV movie, right? It's like, it's exactly what TV looked like at that time. And if you roll forward like another 8 years or whatever, you don't get to Rose. Like, Rose is way more classic series than Not in so many ways. Like, it's got a few modern things, the pacing's a bit faster, and there's the romance and stuff, but it's not this similar jump in time as a TV movie. So, I sort of feel like TV movie is an indication of what we could have had in 2005 with like a really different TV show, but instead we got something quite similar.
And would you have wanted to see that very different show?
Yes, I would have. I'm glad we got what we got, because I think that was really obviously the way to go. But I was really expecting this like much more modern series in 2005. And I think, I would have enjoyed like well enough, I think, a 1996 like show, like, that looked like Sliders or whatever at the time. It probably wouldn't have been very good, and it probably would have been cancelled after a year, but it still would have been fun to watch, I guess. And, like maybe to be more like the K9 TV series or something, it's just kind of a bit cringy, but like, it's there for the hardcore people.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's people like us, fans like us would have, I'm sure, eaten it up. So, yeah.
Yeah, or I think what's also possible is you would have got a show that was not for us. It was for the general audience, such as they are, and a very, very light kind of connections to anything that we recognize. And I mean, if you read the Nth Doctor, which was all the various ideas they'd had over the years, they published that in a book in the 90s, and they are terrible. Like, they are absolutely appalling. And reading the Nth Doctor makes me love the TV movie even more, because I'm like, it could have been so bad. Like, it's pretty bad, but it could have been so terrible. It's there's one where the Doctor and companion get married under the stars. Like, there's another one where like I think Davros is 12. Like, it's just bizarre. And so and there's the rapping TARDIS, and like there's all kinds of stuff that's proposed. So we really got off lightly, I think, with this TV movie.
Yeah, when you contextualize it like that, that's true. The Nth Doctor is a very interesting read for those people out there who have not read it. Very interesting. Yeah.
So what do we think of Sylvester McCoy in the TV movie?
I was seeing that question in the chat. Do you feel that outside of getting shot abruptly, McCoy got a decent send off? I actually like the fact that he gets shot abruptly. I'm not a big fan of McCoy anyway, and I know a lot of people really love McCoy. So McCoy fans might not have liked that, but I think it's really striking to have that happen. That he just opens the door and gets shot like that. It's very it's like nihilistic and dark.
It's very American.
That's true too.
He just walks into gunfire, and I think it was narratively, it was really important to have him there, to have Sylvester McCoy as the Seventh Doctor at the beginning of this film, even though it was probably a fair amount of fan service, because if they were trying to get a new show off the ground and this was a backdoor pilot or whatever, you could easily argue like he wasn't necessary. But I think as we think about the regenerations that happened leading up to this, like there was always there was some kind of lead up to it, the Sixth Doctor into the Seventh notwithstanding, but there's a whole story dedicated, the Doctor got sick or got lost in the vortex, or has been getting weaker and weaker or whatever. So I agree with you, Bill, like the fact that he just comes out and then gets shot, and that it's sort of, you rip the Band-Aid off. I think it's actually kind of interesting. I mean, of course we didn't get a ton of McCoy speaking, for example, or doing much of what we know the Seventh Doctor is in the movie as a result of that. But I think it was the best way to have him included, but still show the regeneration and he's an alien, because you still got to do all those things because he got shot and then regenerated.
Yeah, I really liked that he got a send off. at all. And on the flip side, that means that we only get like 70 minutes of McGann as the doctor, but it's good to have that continuity. Yeah, I really liked that he was there, and that it wasn't more about him is good as well. So
yeah, I think that would have defeated the purpose. Like, it wasn't about like the continuing adventures of the Seventh Doctor. Like, it was his bookend. You know, his time was over, and it's literally you're just here to sort of pass the baton to your successor.
Marcia, I love you almost called the Ninth Doctor, so the Eighth Doctor, the McDoctor.
I like that sort of Freudian slip there. That's good. I like McDoctor.
And if they had not had him in it and just started with McGann, they would have had to have totally rewritten the entire, like, what would be the point of any of the hospital stuff if they didn't have McCoy in there at all?
I feel like it would have had to have been a completely different story, right? Like, it probably would have had to come in probably to the already in progress adventures of the Eighth Doctor. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't have had any of the hospital, all of that storyline.
I mean, everything about it is built around the hospital. Eric Masters being the master, Grace being involved. Everything is built around the Seventh Doctor being taken to the hospital.
I mean, I think it's great. It's great for us as fans, and you know, in the long run, of course, it did no harm. But I think at the time, you know, there was this concern that like you start with the wrong things, right? You're starting with some other guy, and he's not the good-looking guy who's going to be, you know, like on the screen most of the time. It's some old guy. You know, you start inside the TARDIS, and a lot of people said like, what's this box, and how does that relate to that giant cathedral we saw earlier, right? It takes some thinking to realize that the giant thing is inside the small thing, right? Because that's not obvious if you don't have Doctor Who history. So if it's for just the fans, then the continuity is great and so on. If it's for the general audience, I don't know. I mean, I personally would have rather seen like you start with McGann and then maybe you play his backstory, there's flashbacks, and you know, you sort of like, who's this guy, and like how does he relate? And they're the same person. You know, you sort of build it up that way, maybe.
Right.
You know, I see what you're saying, but you know, with a lot of us who came into I feel like modern media babies the audience too much, and that when I started watching Doctor Who at the age of 10 or 11 and just randomly found a Fourth Doctor episode on PBS that was airing and watched it, I didn't have anything that was explaining anything to me, and I was fine. And maybe it's just that adults lose that. Like, as kids, we accept what's put in front of us, and we're like, this is great. I don't care that I don't know what's going on. I just am loving it. But maybe it's, as adults, we lose that. And so, as you're saying, you know, when it starts with in the TARDIS and people don't know that, like, I took my dad and my mom to see a screening of The Snowmen at the Parkway in Minneapolis as a special event. And my dad was like, I didn't understand anything that was going on. And I'm just like, it's just, you just go with it and stuff. And maybe that's kind of one of the issues with it, is that, you know, they were trying to find that line and they couldn't find it, but that also adult modern audiences are babies.
Well, you know, you could say it's, you know, to do with the difference of imagination or whatever. And I mean, I remember very specifically watching, I was watching the TV movie on the TV in my parents' room, and I was like laying on their bed watching the TV. And I remember at the beginning, you know, when we, you know, it's to your point, Stacey, like it's this Victorian cathedral or whatever. I had no idea that was the TARDIS until there's this sort of slow pan, and then you see what is obviously the console. Well, to an established fan, you can see it's the console. And I literally was like, you know, I gasped. I was like, that's the TARDIS. Like, I had no idea that it was going to be like that. And so I didn't hate it. I think it's a really cool take on the ship, but I was very surprised, and I literally remember gasping at the time. But I could see how, to your point, from a casual viewer standpoint, like, would they I mean, obviously they would have eventually, but like, how quickly would they realize like this is the inside? This is the huge inside of this tiny box, because that's never really addressed. It sort of is within the motorcycle scene with the police officer,
but it's very
but
late.
otherwise, yeah, right. That's much later in the action, and so otherwise you just sort of have to realize like, oh, this box just landed. He was inside this big thing. He's walked out of the box. So I guess people just had to put it together.
Yeah. So we have a question in the chat which says, what do we think of the TARDIS redesign for the movie?
That's my favorite TARDIS interior ever.
Oh,
me too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
even
amazing.
the big handle labeled "break" like in letters down the side.
Hey, if you could have fast return written in pen.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah,
I will say I like I said, I like it, and I actually really like the rotor. I love this sort of meshing parts, because I love anything to do with the TARDIS, the police box exterior, I just love anything TARDIS related. So I thought it was a really cool take, the whole CGI ceiling. The only thing I would nitpick at is that it felt, and I felt the same way about Matt Smith's first control room, is it just felt a little bit too simplistic. Like, it didn't feel like, he's got a big, lever that says break. He's got a few switches here, a little dial there, a flippy thing that says like, I'm in Earth in this era and this date. Like, it felt a little bit too simplistic, but otherwise I really liked the whole vibe it provided.
I love the theory that he's in the Humanian era, because he called it that because that's where he met that human Ian. And so,
yeah, that's good.
Well, well, it makes sense. The human Ian period. I like the interior, but I kind of miss that it's kind of a signal that we're into these new big giant console rooms now, and you're not going to get the old Lime Grove studio look that we've grown to love.
But I think
until
in
2020,
the 60s, like in the 60s, the console room was like the biggest set on television, right? It was
yeah.
always meant to be this giant room. It's just, Lime Grove Studio was as big as they could get it into.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you know, Bill? Because you said you had the 90s and the wilderness years sort of passed you by from a Doctor Who fandom standpoint. So when you sort of heard about the TV movie in the early 2000s, did you know anything about what had been happening in the show, like whether it was the books or anything about the TV movie, or did you go in sort of completely fresh and cold, like not knowing anything about what you were about to see?
It's actually funny because the internet was around by then, so
right.
that's how I got back into Doctor Who, was by reading about it on the internet. So by the time I saw it, I already knew all the accepted fan wisdom about it, actually.
Okay.
So I knew that we don't like the kiss. We love the console, whatever. I think it was, we love that console room, actually. I think that was the accepted wisdom. Stuff like
I have
that.
Harmony. I have Harmony.
Half human. I have Harmony. I guess we can go down the list.
Yeah. All right. What do we think of Half Human?
Okay. Marcia doesn't like it.
Marcia doesn't like it.
It was a throwaway line at the time. I'm like, the doctor, like when he first says it, I'm like going, this is a doctor making a joke.
Yeah.
That's all I thought it was the doctor making a joke.
But the master says it in this episode. It's the same story.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
it would have been so easy for it to just have been a joke. But,
right. And because he was trying, at the time, he's getting Professor Wag's badge so that they can get access to the clock. So yeah, I agree with you, Jason, that it could absolutely have just been a distraction. Now I will say that friend to, I think, all of us here, Matt, just yesterday, I think, when we were messaging in the Discord, I think it was through that, but he said how he thinks that the Eighth Doctor it's just the Eighth Doctor that is half human as a result of blood transfusions received during a surgery, which that's something I can co-sign on to, because then it's just in the moment, it explains away what was said in the show. It doesn't mean that the Doctor is half human forevermore, because that doesn't really make any sense. So
and the potion that he gets in Night of the Doctor turns him back into a time.
Correct, because he gets from the Sisterhood of Karn. He wants to be, a presumably Time Lord warrior, and so then all undone. So, perfect.
As we know, if you want to be a warrior, you got to get rid of all that human, because the humans are terrible warriors.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're such peaceful people.
I feel like there was some other media that did talk about that, tried to explain it, whether it was a book or an audio or something. I feel like that it did get touched on.
I'm sure they've done that a bunch of times.
A number of times. Yeah, they like selling the novels, like they kept trying to sort of hand wave it away all the time, but the problem is they didn't consult with each other. So there's like, 50 different tiny explanations. Like, yeah.
Gary Russell wrote 2 of them, probably.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Well, now we've got the Doctor's not even a Time Lord anymore, so who knows?
That's right. Maybe he is half
Spoiler
human
for
on
the
his
time
mother's
of
side.
children. Yeah, that could be. That could absolutely be. It all.
But where do the looms fit in? Where do the looms fit in?
That's for another panel.
That's an other
wrong
discussion.
panel.
Yeah. I see what you did there, Stacey.
Yeah.
Where it's right up there with the human Ian era. Like
that's right. Oh yeah, they're gonna keep coming.
Yep. But anyway, I choose to sort of largely, other than that theory that I just shared, I would say I just ignore it. Not true.
So when I had asked Bill earlier about what his favorite scene was, that I was fishing for an answer, because
I didn't even think of it. Yeah,
one of my favorite characters in the movie is just it's a character that only has a single name, Pete, played by Will Sasso. I love Will Sasso as an actor, and I wish he had gotten more in. But I mean, he has some great scenes in the movie, and he's watching a movie during that scene. I feel like I've seen that movie before, but I can't think of what it is.
Okay, it's got Boris Karloff. I know the one you're talking about.
Dracula.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wolfman.
There's actually there's a fair amount of it in there, and it's funny because it's always jarring because it's the original edited version, the censored version of Frankenstein that they use, so the line doesn't play right. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a line in Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Totally going off the rails now, but there's a line in Frankenstein where he says, "Now I know what it feels like to be God." And that audio was missing for many years, and he just says, "Now I know, or something like that. That's it.
Bill is
That's
our resident Frankenstein expert as the co-host of the Frankenstein Minute podcast.
Check it out wherever fine podcasts are.
Wherever those are.
Away. Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason it's where the fine ones are too.
Yeah, I don't know how Bill's got in there, but I think it's like the clearance rack of podcasts. Like, just go to that clearance rack and you'll find Frankenstein Minute.
I mean, I think generally the direction in the TV movie is absolutely stunning. It's some of the best directed Doctor Who that's in existence.
Yeah.
I mean, the opening sequence where you just kind of you go for the different eyes, and you go to the fish eye, and then there's the cleaver cutting. Like, it's such a fluid kind of like intro. It's just extremely well designed.
Yeah, there are a couple of effects that really look like they come from 1996 that I don't really understand why they look the way they do in the context of the story, but I completely agree with you. It's really striking. It's really good looking.
I love the sort of I know this wasn't a cinema movie, but I love some of the cinematic nature of it. Like, I love at the beginning the TARDIS materialization, like it's very evocative of what we see now as far as the wind coming up and things like that. I don't like the fact that they used what I would term as more of a sort of first, second Doctor materialization noise, the sort of without I love the sort of thump at the end, and that was sort of missing from this materialization. But the whole way it was handled, like, I remember rewinding that scene over and over again because, again, I love TARDIS stuff, and to see the way it was blocked and shot, and it obviously materializes right in front of Chang Li at just the right moment, just as the TARDIS is wont to do. So moments like that I loved. I think, to your point, Bill, like some of the things that feel like 90s CGI, like I think of the glass moment, and I think of the when we see the TARDIS in the alley towards the end, and there's sort of lightning all around it as they're sort of just about to save the day. That now looks fairly dated. But I think you're right, Stacey. I think it feels like a much more cinematic presentation of Doctor Who than we'd ever gotten before. And
I think, honestly, while watching it, that's what makes it frustrating when bad things happen, is you're watching something that seems so competently produced, and then they cut to Grace on the back of the motorcycle saying, "I finally find a guy and he's an alien or whatever." And I'm like, what? Why?
I finally find the right guy and he's from another planet.
Why would she say that then? Like, it's not even that bad a line, but it makes no sense.
In the moment, yeah.
It's because they filmed it, you know.
They
They filmed her saying like 6 lines, and we got to find 2 that we can use.
Oh, right. And that's another one that I think was in the commercials, if I remember.
It was,
right.
yeah. Yeah, because it played a lot, that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a good line, but it makes no sense.
It is a very 90s line.
It's a
very
agreed.
Very 90s.
It's of its era for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I'm trying to think of what shows were on around that time in the 90s that were kind of the, not that I'm saying that they tried to, well, whatever the TV version of chick lit is, but there are aspects of the TV movie that I feel kind of fit that, for want of a better term, chick lit aspect, really playing up the fact that we have a heroine character in Grace, different than, you know, any of the female companions that came before or after, in, you know, whether we're talking about Rose or Martha. I mean, yeah, there's been characters that have, you know, kind of mooned after the Doctor and everything, and, you know, have been doctors again in their own right and everything. But, you know, Grace is she really is the one where you're like, okay, this is the Maddie from Moonlighting character. You know, this is Diane from Cheers. She kind of fits that mold. I feel, even though as we say, she is a surgeon and everything, she's fitting that romantic female lead way more than I think any of the other companions ever have, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's very insightful, because I think you're right. She is cast as a romantic lead, which is not how we usually think of companions at all, because they're not really fulfilling that function, even if they do have a crush on the Doctor or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I think it's back to what you were saying earlier, Stacey, about how, you know, this, you know, thinking what happened in Survival and then how this feels of its era in the 90s. Like, I do think it feels very mid 90s in terms of just what was being produced and shown at that time. And that's, you know, anything from that era is going to have, you know, it's going to feel date stamped to some extent. Just like if we look back at, you know, series 1 with Eccleston in 2005, like that has a sort of 2005-ish date stamp on it. So that, just comes with the territory.
All right, so we have a question which says, what American actor at the time in the 90s would you have rather have seen looking back to play Grace?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say it's such a thankless role in a way, because she's I don't know. I'm trying to think who could make that better.
Yeah,
but I guess I maybe there's more to her than I thought listening to you guys talk about her.
I think she's pretty good, actually. I don't have a problem with her. I think that, you know, you've got quite a complex character in some ways, because, you know, you give her a career, which, you know, like, you're already off to a good start with that, and she kind of has like autonomy, but also like she's not flawless, and like, you know, she's not this perfect angel or something either. She's kind of goofy and like, you know, like wisecracking and stuff.
Was anyone familiar with her work? Like, whenever you first saw the TV movie, did you know
she'd been in Deep Space Nine. Yeah, she was in Deep Space Nine shortly before, so I knew her from that. There was this funny quote, because, you know, like before the TV movie, like Doctor Who was like the cheap show, and somebody asked her about what's the difference between working on Star Trek versus working on Doctor Who, and she said, well, in Doctor Who you have so much more time and money. And everyone's like, wait, what? Like, this is not what we are used to hearing.
You know, maybe Karen Allen. You know, she's I kind of feel like she fits the Marion Ravencroft mold a little bit, but not enough. Like, so, I mean, better than Kate Capshaw, I guess. I don't know.
Marcia, how did you find Grace?
I quite liked Grace. I actually made a TARDIS costume based off of Grace's ball gown. But yeah, I mean, I found her a little annoying, but that was in the way that any romantic lead in the 90s would have annoyed me, I think. So, especially, 12 years later or whatever it was.
Yeah, do you think, I mean, was that her as an actress, or that was her, you found her character annoying? Like,
I think it was the character rather than the actor.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with Daphne Ashbrook's work. Yeah, I'm not the kind of person who usually does like fan recasting, so this is not something my brain usually does, so I don't know quite how to approach the question.
Yeah, I think the casting in general is actually pretty good. McGann is just astounding. He's so good. He's just perfect almost all the time. His wigs, I would appreciate it if they had only used 6 or 7 wigs instead of a different wig every shot. Like his hair is completely different. But even I noticed if you cut out like maybe just about half a minute, even Eric Roberts is pretty good.
Oh yeah,
he's
great. Actually, I mean, he's got some cheesy lines and he does some funny things, but like he's really watchable. Right? Yeah, I mean,
especially when he's you do yours.
When he comes out, he's dressed as the Time Lord. He says, "I always dress for the occasion," and you just expect him to slide down the banister. Like it's like
totally. Yeah,
I'm really sad that didn't happen.
Yeah,
I was thinking of the scene there that's clearly blocked, just like the Terminator, right? Where the Terminator says, "I'll be back." It looks just like that one, and he's ripping his fingernail off. He the way he delivers his lines when he does that, he's not quite a robot. He's the master in some weird way.
It's that callousness, because as far as, and we talked a little bit about this, the whole in our master panel yesterday, for anyone who might have attended that, there's the sort of callousness, and we talked specifically about Treemass and the Keeper of Traken and having his body taken over. And I have to assume that this master is feeling much the same way. Like this is just a body that he's using because he needs to be able to get around and do things. And so that the casual way in which he just rips the nail off and then flicks it at the nurse is really disturbing. And obviously some of that's the writing, but he plays it very callously, like I think a good master would. So I think you're right, Bill. I think he gets the dress for the occasion. Like he gets a bad rap, but I think he was written to be, I think, the way he was portrayed, and the way he was portrayed was I would say a master who is in desperation mode, because he's just gone from being this sort of liquefied snake thing to taking over this body to like, I've got to do something to get a permanent body and get out of here. And so he'll do whatever it takes to do that. So yeah, I think that there's some good stuff to be seen.
He also plays 2 roles. He plays the original guy completely different.
That's true. That is true. That is very true. Although he has this sort of random like New York type accent in San Francisco, which seems, obviously he could be a transplant. That just seemed like more of a device he chose to make the characters very different, rather than one that necessarily made sense in the context of the film. But there could have even been a throwaway line of him like being from New York or something like that. But you're right, he did play 2 different people, 2 different
on his mother's side
ways.
Yeah,
on his mother. Well, because he was sort of for a U.S. audience at least, sort of the star power, right? Because he's the brother of Julia Roberts, and he had been in other stuff. I didn't know him myself, but I gather that he was sort of a little bit of the star power for the U.S. audience.
I would say he's the nearest thing they had to a name.
Yes, exactly. Like obviously he's not like a big name, but I think he was meant to be the closest thing they could get to it.
I mean, he'd won a big award earlier, so that was kind of.
He was nominated for an Oscar.
He was an Oscar-nominated actor. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There
you
go. All right. So what do we think of the Smurf Daleks?
I'm glad we didn't. See them.
I like trying to piece together the timeline, right? Because if you look at the 7th Doctor destroys Skaro, which is a huge event in the timeline of the Time War, and then by the time we get to the 9th Doctor, or Eccleston doctor, or whatever we're calling him, everything's gone to hell.
Yeah.
So right in the middle there, McGann is called to Skaro to collect the remains of the master, and he not McGann. Did I say McGann? McCoy. And he does, and and everything goes fine. They just say, "Here you go."
So you're onto something here, because we've seen in the history of the modern, series, different factions of Daleks. And you've got, the one who flew into the time vortex at the end of series 4, and all these things. And I like where you're going, because I could see, like, he, in this moment, like, that was a faction of Daleks that for whatever reason, put the master on trial, maybe because he was acting as an agent of theirs in the Time War and screwed it up, and they're like, bye, come get him. And then it was after that the Doctor destroys Skaro. So I think it can all.
Somebody go back through and use get the audio of just saying bye and put a ring modulator on it, please.
Yeah. Bye. I thought you were gonna say flu, because I like that one too. But
Both.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Perfect.
Marcia, what do you think of those Daleks?
Until y'all brought them up, I had completely forgotten there were even Daleks appearing in the TV movie. So
blink.
How much do you think they had to pay for that?
For the terrible voice.
Well, is that why they didn't use the right voices, so they didn't have to pay for it?
Maybe, yeah.
Like, I didn't even, I think the first time I watched it, on broadcast, I don't think I even, like, it even, connected in my brain that those were Dalek voices. I mean, it should have, because he says Daleks, they say it's on Skaro. But I think I was just so, like, thrown off by the fact that it was this, exterminate, like, just didn't fit.
Well, Nick Briggs was much younger then, so that's I think
that's right. His voice hadn't broken.
That's true. Okay. Yep. I'm with you there. Yep.
So
okay.
they're not Smurf Daleks. They're Peter Brady Daleks.
Right. Pre-pubescent. Yep.
Yeah. The Dalek bombs hadn't dropped yet.
or maybe they were, some other type of Dalek. Like, we've seen different types of Daleks over the years, and most recently in the New Year's special, Revolution of the Daleks. So nothing is off the table. So when I think
you're onto something there, Jeff. I think there were very small Daleks and very blue Daleks.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
this
why we didn't
Skaro was a mushroom Skaro.
Yeah.
That was 3 apples tall.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, so we have a few minutes left. Can we get final thoughts on the TV movie? Marcia, why do you go first?
Well, I really enjoy the movie for all of its awfulness. Not least, mostly because it gives us Paul McGann. Because McGann is actually a really amazing doctor, and I expanded that because I got into Big Finish, and I have come to respect McGann's doctor as pretty high up there in my personal ranking of favorites on any given day, since the order changes daily. But I also love it because it gave us the chance to see him again later in the Night of the Doctor, that tiny little, oh my God, I screamed so loud. But it was, I love the movie because it is a transition. It serves that very special niche between classic and modern Who, and it's so unique, and I kind of have to love it just for that.
Awesome. Bill?
It's really good. I think it's funny because if you rewind this, I said it was bad, but it's also really good. And a big part of it is what Marcia said. Paul McGann is amazing. Like, when I was watching it today, I thought this guy should have been a big movie star. He's so, I guess I just want to say, attractive. He's just such a presence on the screen, and his voice too is a big part of that, which is, I think, why the transition to audio was so successful. When he delivers his lines perfectly, he's the Doctor just immediately. As soon as he uses his Time Lord super strength to kick down that door, is that what he does? I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I'm going back to it
yeah.
being bad again.
Maybe he punched it, but he definitely knocked it in, or knocked it out.
Well, Jason.
You know, I've always had fondness for it. It's been a while since I've seen it again, but you know, I was never kind of part of the "this isn't real Doctor Who" contingent. I've always felt it was a fine continuation, and I'm glad that it's kind of, you know, getting more love with the digital, or with the shiny disc releases and stuff. So, and then, you know, seeing Paul McGann come back in the 50th anniversary, and, you know, it'll be interesting to see if they get him to do something for the, in 2 years from now, 60th anniversary.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Cool. Jeff?
You know, I really enjoy the TV movie. It's a really, you know, I used the word ephemera earlier, like it's a really unique piece of Doctor Who history. You know, it stands as the only, you know, official Doctor Who of the 90s. I mean, you can say what you will about Dimensions in Time, but for that reason alone, it carries, I think, a special place in my fanish heart. As everybody else said, it gave us Paul McGann. Certainly from my own standpoint, I think for probably other people here, I think what it then kicked off with, you know, although it was sad because it then led to the sunset of the new adventures from Virgin Publishing, but led to the Eighth Doctor and Past Doctor adventures from BBC Books, and I followed those books religiously for the first at least couple years, 2-3 years they were coming out, and then, you know, when we got to Big Finish in '99. I followed that religiously for the first few years as well, and it was such a big moment when McGann came in for his first story with Storm Warning, and to your point, Bill, like, you know, his voice transitioned so well from being the Doctor on screen for just a very short window of time to being the Doctor on audio with you know, great companions like Charlie, and that was Doctor Who at the time for us, was these, you know, these monthly audio adventures. So I think what it was, what it led to, what it has given us in terms of Paul McGann, which still isn't much on screen, but it is something, and what it again represents in that era as the sort of only 90s adventure of Doctor Who, I think are all really important to the lore of the show. So I'm glad we have it. It's certainly not perfect, but it's very enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that I both like love and mock at the same time, right? So I deeply loved it at the time. I still have a really soft spot for it, and also it's simultaneously hilariously bad in so many places. And so, you know, and I think in that ways it's kind of unclassifiable, right? It's really hard to kind of nail down. There's a fan edit somebody did of the TV movie where, you know, Sylvester McCoy is sitting in the TARDIS and he's like sipping tea and the record is playing. The record skips and then it's Paul McGann sipping tea. And like, that's the whole movie.
That's the whole movie.
And it's kind of like, you can't sort of argue that that's not an improvement in some ways. And yet, you know,
not unlike the first episode of Time in the Ronnie, where you just roll over and, oh, look, it's a new Doctor. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, end credits. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's worth that.
All right, so I guess in the last minute, maybe let's just, so Paul McGann comes back in Night of the Doctor, which we referred to briefly, but maybe we can just talk about that a little bit more. How did you find his return?
Brilliant.
I thought it was a shame it wasn't on TV.
Yeah, I agree. It was a neat little quick story, a neat way to dovetail into the War Doctor.
Yeah, just picture Day of the Doctor with that at the beginning. I mean, that with that opening where he walks in and says, "I'm the Doctor, but probably not the one you were expecting."
Yes,
that would have been so fantastic.
What were you going to say, Marcia? You were about to say something.
Oh, I was just saying that I thought it was fantastic, and I was agreeing that it's a shame that it wasn't on TV, because you know, like I say, one of my favorite Doctors and only 70 minutes of screen time. I would have liked to see him on the screen a little more.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that there was an argument at the time that Paul McGann couldn't have played what became the War Doctor, because he was sort of too likable and too nice and too kind of like, you know, like pleasant, and then you see him in Night of the Doctor and you're like, oh no, this guy could have done it. Actually, we could have had a whole, you know, like dark Time Lord kind of arc with Paul McGann very happily, very easily. You know, I mean, I think the John Hurt idea is a good idea, but like, you know, it kind of upset the apple carts more because of you know, how they came about that. But you know, but also they did that because they couldn't get Christopher Eccleston, you know. But I think you could have had Paul McGann basically in the Time War actively, and it would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You could, yes, I think that would have worked fine, but I do appreciate, like Bill and Marcia said, it absolutely should have been on TV, not a sort of, web extra sort of thing. But it recognized the important role of the Eighth Doctor, because he was the Eighth Doctor from 1996 in the TV movie through to Rose in March of 2005. Like, books, audios, comic strips, like he was the Doctor for a very long time. And I think, you might say it was maybe just throwing him a little bit of a bone to get, anything in the 50th, but I think they didn't have to do that. So I'm glad they did. They could have done it a little better, but I'm glad that it's, again, I'm glad that that's there to provide, an official bookend to his tenure as the Doctor. So I think he deserved that.
Cool. All right. So I think, yes, we're at time. So I would just like to say, if you're watching this, please like, and Console Room is happening from January 15th to 17th. The web address is www.console-room.com. Thank you very much for everyone.
I want to
participating.
jump in
Jason,
real quick.
yes.
Yeah. In my role as con chair, Bill, Jeff, could you guys stand up for a second so people can see your t-shirts?
I'll point my camera down.
Okay, so
can you see it?
we are going to do a reorder on these shirts. The link should be up soon. It's only going to be available for a week, but these are the official Console Room 2021 t-shirts, and we'll be posting the link on Facebook and on in Discord. So if you haven't ordered yet, you'll get another chance. We do have a minimum order of, I think, 32 shirts in order for it to happen. So watch for that link.
And is it just the shirts that are going to be available? Because I know there were also like hoodies.
I think it's all the shirts, tank tops, everything.
Great. Awesome. It's a really good design this year. Everybody buy one.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.